Thank you, Dr. Lalit, and thank you for IET for inviting me and organizing this timely webinar. It definitely appears that Dr. Lalit has done his own research, and you are spot on some of the remarks you made about Port City. So thank you very much on that. And as you correctly said also, I think the presumption about Port City is also misconstrued due to lack of awareness. So I think my objective really today is to really explain the project background, purpose of this project, and why an SDG law is required for this project to be successful. And more importantly, after my presentation, I'm happy to take any questions the membership may have. So let me now try and share the slides with you. Right? Can you see my slides on the screen?
Yes, Thulci. Yeah, we can see your slides and we can very well hear you.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
So building a world-class city for South Asia. This is really our vision. So this is Port City Colombo in brief. So it's a 2.7 square kilometer reclaimed, an extension of the current central business district, as you know. The whole 269 hectares of land is actually divided into 5 precincts, as you can see in color codes, which really resonates each development personalities within each of these 5 different cities. It's the first master plan township development in Sri Lanka. A multi-service special economic zone with modern lifestyle and amenity. So the idea about a multi-service special economic zone, the framework law was passed in Parliament and got the certification by Speaker last month. So now we are really ready to do business. I will discuss a little bit more. The next question is, why a reclaimed extension? As you all know, high quality real estate is crucial for businesses, investments, and also to drive tourism demand. Now, if you take Colombo, our due to the limited land availability to do a real planned city was a huge challenge. As you would know, land acquisition takes a long time and it's a very costly affair. So hence the option of reclamation land from the sea was mooted actually much way before the 2013 reclamation started. And reclaiming land from the sea and developing planned cities by the sea is not only unique for Sri Lanka. Many countries have done this over and over again. I think some of the examples Dr. Lalit mentioned, Palm Jumeirah, Dubai is quite famous for this type of development. And this is the first time that Sri Lanka has reclaimed land to really develop a city. We have done reclamation works to develop ports, but this is the first time we have made an attempt to do that to develop a city. Again, Colombo has often been identified as overpopulated, ad hoc, unplanned development. So having planned public spaces, beaches is quite important. And our aged infrastructure could not really support the modern development requirement of a regional population as well. Hence, the reclamation of land really provided a clean slate to circumvent some of these issues that I mentioned above. What you can see here is the I will move my cursor. This is the South Port development. That's a terminal. This breakwater was developed in 2007. Commenced development in 2007. It's about 5.2 kilometer long breakwater here. And if you look at this South terminal here, there's about a 2 kilometer width here. So the Port City reclamation or the Port City new city was really anchored to the South Harbour development project. And actually it made the project was more feasible simply because this breakwater was already in existence. And generally in Sri Lanka, the sand or sediment accumulation is from south to the north. And because of this South Port breakwater, there was a certain amount of sand was anyway accumulating on this breakwater. And just to give you a kind of context in terms of the size, the South Port reclamation consists of about 820 hectares compared to what Port City is about 269. So this reclamation, these idea conceived way back. Actually, initially a Singaporean company called SESMA proposed this in 2004. And if you look at that chart on the left, at that time it was proposed South Harbour with 145 hectares was what was initially envisaged. That was in 2004. Then the real feasibility studies and those conceptual thoughts were put into action in 2011 with initial technical feasibility studies being conducted. Again, at that time, the thinking was somewhere around 130, 133 hectares was the reclamation. And now, later, subsequently, this was increased to about 233 hectares. But what we've ended up having now is about 269 hectares, and that majority increase was actually due to increase in the public spaces, the parks, the waterways, and the beaches. So more common areas was increased, hence the increase of the land reclaimed from 233 increased to 269. As I mentioned here, 30% of the land allocated. So 1/3 of Port City of 269 hectares is open for public. That consists of parks, roads, beaches, and total park areas, green areas within Port City is about 27 hectares. Now, golf face green is about 5 hectares. So it is going to be a real green lung for the city of Colombo. I want to play a short video now, which will give you a description of how the reclamation, as I know most of you are engineers, I'm sure you will be quite keen, interested to understand how the reclamation process worked. Let me play this video. It's about a 4 to 5 minute video. Can you see the video now?
Yes, Thulci.
Lalit, you can hear the audio, right?
No audio.
No
Was
audio.
heard, yeah.
Wait. I think that's an issue. So audio has to be heard.
Yeah, there has to be audio.
One second.
We can't hear the audio.
Some are saying they can hear the audio. Okay,
Yes.
now we can hear. If you play from the...
This project is a first stage construction project. The main activity is the construction of the land reclamation and its protection structures. The breakwater and revetment surrounding Port City provide protection against waves from the adjacent sea. The construction of the breakwater and land reclamation is synchronized and consists of 3 construction phases. During Phase 1, in Phase 2, at the end of Phase 3, the construction of marine structures, land reclamation, and ground improvement will all be completed. The breakwater surrounds Colombo Port City at the southwest and serves as a main protection for the land area. The total length of the offshore breakwater is 3,245 meters. Around 3.6 million cubic meters rock is used in the complete project. The core of the breakwater consists of 1 to 500 kilogram quarry run and backfill sand. The armor protection consists of precast Chinese pods weighing 17 to 22 tons. The breakwater will be constructed by a combination of land-based and waterborne equipment. During construction, placement of rocks in concrete blocks is supported by large-scale GPS excavator computer-aided systems. After casting in the precast yard on site, the Chinese pods are lifted by large-scale gantry cranes on transportation vehicles and transported to the storage area in the site. Thanks to the adoption of heavy-duty long-reach excavators and world-leading high-definition real-time imaging sonar, installing of the 42,000 Chinese pods can be accomplished. Total reclamation works include 269 hectares of land reclamation, sand core at the breakwater, and other sandfill work. Dredger reclaimed sand comes from the appointed sand borrow area in the northwest of the project. Average transportation distance being 25 kilometers. Sand filling is carried out by the world's most advanced ultra-large self-propelled trailing suction hopper dredger, Junyang-1. Junyang-1 is 167.5 meters long, with a full load draft of 11 meters. The maximum dredging depth which can be reached is 90 meters. Its hopper load capacity goes up to 21,028 cubic meters. The dredging operation to fully load the hopper can be completed in around 1 hour. Junyang-1 is able to complete the sand pumping process in approximately 1 hour. By by using various construction methods such as rainbowing, dumping, and bow dumping, 71 million cubic meters of sand backfill will be accomplished. The canal seawall is located in the center of Port City. It's 5,599 meters long and 70 meters wide, running through the city from northwest to southeast. Besides facilitating water exchange, the revetment structures also provide a beautiful landscape. The seawall is designed as a vertical block structure. The structure consists of precast concrete blocks and a cast-in situ concrete crown wall. The blocks are placed on a rubble mound stone foundation. Ripraps and filter layers are used as backfill materials behind the blocks. The first step is to precast the concrete blocks in a large precast yard using advanced integral open-close concrete formworks. An information management and monitor system is adopted in the whole concrete producing process. Seawall is designed in a beautiful curved shape. Up to 179 types of blocks will be used in the structure. In order to control placement, blocks are lifted and installed by two A0T crawler cranes. Before lifting the blocks, an inspection is carried out by drivers to check and make sure the foundation is evenly leveled. After the installation of concrete blocks, backfill of 1 to 100 kilograms ripraps, placement of filter layers, and construction of upper structures are in sequence. According to the development plan, the area for ground improvement in Phase 1 is 159 hectares. Two main methods, dynamic compaction and vibro compaction, are adopted. Dynamic compaction. The process involves densifying deep loose soil deposits using a large amount of damping energy. Vibro compaction. By the strong vibration of the vibro float, the sand particles can be rearranged and the void ratio can be reduced, which significantly improves the bearing capacity of the barren ground. Port City Colombo is the largest foreign capital project invested by China Communications Construction Company Limited. It will be the catalyst for growth of Colombo, a place that fuses the finance and energy of Sri Lanka and the most promising financial center of South Asia. The Phase 1 construction will lay a solid foundation for the future development of Port City Colombo. We will all be witnesses to the rising and booming of this international city of a bright future.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah. It was a very good video. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought it might be quite useful. As you can see, it's really an engineering marvel with a lot of technical input. Second, sorry. With a lot of
it really addresses our engineers' expectation. Yeah, thank you.
and also the technical know-how of these reclamations. Chinese have done it many times over, so they were the really experts in this field. Now, if you look at the Hong Kong airport, for instance, that's about 1,300 hectares. That was done by the CCCC, the parent company of China Harbour. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Let me move on to touch upon, I think Dr. Lalit also mentioned about project being suspended. So certain variations since the project was initially during initial inception is 2013, and when the project was suspended, one of the concerns was that the terms of the project obviously were renegotiated as a public-private partnership. As you would know, in a public-private partnership, the risks and rewards are separated between the public sector, which is the government, and a private sector, some of the responsibilities under the previous agreement, which was with the government, was realigned and was allocated to the project company. For instance, getting all the environmental approvals under the previous Sri Lanka Port Authority agreement was a responsibility of the government. With the revised tripartite agreement, where Sri Lanka Port Authority is no longer a party to this agreement, the tripartite agreement was with the Urban Development Authority, and at that time, Ministry of Megapolis and the project company. Under the tripartite agreement, getting all the environmental approvals, those responsibilities now lies with the project company. Also, under the revised agreement, there was no freehold land. All 269 hectares of land, once it is reclaimed, and all the infrastructure development once is completed, the project company needs to hand it back over to the government. Now, land was already handed back, and it was declared as part of the Colombo Administrative District in 2019 August. All the internal utility works, all that development is currently underway. There is an asset handover plan. Once that development is completed, this asset will also be handed over back to the government of Sri Lanka. On the environmental front, there were 3 EIAs done, 2 EIAs for the reclamation and internal utility development process, and the 3rd EIA was done for vertical development. And there are 24 government agencies appointed to monitor this project. That includes the CEA, Coast Conservation Authority, GSMB, Sri Lanka Land Reclamation Development, CMC, Ministry of Economic Development, etc., etc., etc. So on the environmental impact assessment, as I said, we did 3 rounds of EIAs. The second EIA, which we call supplementary EIA, when it was done, we received over 215 written submissions because the environmental impact assessment was made available for public for 30 days. Then following the due process, we received over 215 written submissions. We had expert panel. Some of those were taken on board. And for the 3rd EIA also, we received a certain amount of written submissions. And we have, and for reclamation, there was a license issued. And that license has 72 conditions. Now, how do you make sure that those conditions are adhered to? We have what is called Environmental Management Plan. So under the EMP, Environmental Management Plan, we need to demonstrate that these license conditions are strictly adhered to. On the 3rd EIA, on the vertical development, similar process was followed, a license was issued, and that license has about 56 conditions. And similarly, we have what is called Environmental Management Plan to ensure the adherence to those conditions in the license. Also need to ensure, one of the key points is that even the dredging was followed with international standard. There were certain 3 slant burrows were identified away from the shores of Colombo, about 15 to 30 kilometers distance. This dredging activity took place. And also, it is scientifically proven that long as you dredge 3 kilometers away from the shore and at more than 20 meters depth, there is no proven erosion. And the third is that because we've used the most advanced dredging equipment, the suction, we don't dredge more than 2 meters in any particular area. So to make sure the concentration is not beyond 2 meters, and always leave half a meter for regeneration. So this is the method followed. And at one point we have all 3 dredgers working 24/7, and with the satellite tracking, these dredgers' routes were tracked to ensure that they dredge from these identified sand burrows. So by doing and adhering to all of these, the idea was really to have a minimum impact on the marine life, and also the boulders required for the development of the breakwater, which is about 3.2 kilometers. We got those from Colombo and Gampaha district with GSMB approved quarries. And what was required for the development of the breakwater was about 7% of that capacity. Let me discuss a little bit on the utility requirement. Water and power. Water is discussed on the left chart and power is on the right. So we have what is called an anticipated population within Port City. The total population, once it's fully developed, living in population, we expect about 75,000. Another 150 to 175 about transient population, the population, people who will come to Port City for work and leisure and other purposes. So based on the population growth and our development plan synchronizing, we were able to understand what is the utility requirement within Port City. So we have built for the potable water about 39,000 cubic meters a day with storage tanks are designed to do that. But the requirement at the peak, when I say peak, is when the whole Port City is developed in 2040 or 2041, is about 25,000 cubic meters per day. So we are well within that requirement. On the electricity side, the total power generation requirement is about 360 megawatts, but we have designed our capacity to close to 390 megawatts. On the wastewater, similarly estimated is about 20,000 cubic meters per day, but we have built that is about 40% higher than the capacity. Solid waste, again, about 380 tons per day once it's fully operational. During construction, we expect about 50 tons per day. Now, this is the requirement within Port City and the infrastructure that we have built. Now, as you may know, our requirement under the public-private partnership is that the Port City company will develop all the internal utility infrastructure within Port City, and the government of Sri Lanka is required to bring all the connections to the periphery of the Port City, meaning we will be connecting to the national grid in terms of all these utility requirements. And the utility assets, once it's completed, would be handed over to the relevant utility agents. For instance, now when we were laying the water pipes within Port City, there was a design which was discussed with the National Water Board and Drainage. On the utility, on the power requirement, there was discussions on CB because they need to approve the blueprints. They need to approve the equipment we use to develop, because once the asset is handed over to them, they're supposed to maintain and manage the asset. So that discussion, collaboration was quite key in developing the internal infrastructure utility. Now the question is, yes, we have developed this internally. Does the national grid have the supply adequate to meet the demand of Port City? If you take a utility, the water, the power, for instance, the total requirement, as I said, about 360 megawatts, about 8.5% of the installed capacity. Now, as all of you may know, yes, there are certain amount of concerns about our ability to provide uninterrupted power supply. The issue has been that as a country, we have not managed to stick to the long-term power generation plan. So when that happens, obviously there is no doubt a constraint. However, based on the existing capacity we have for the next 10 years, we are quite comfortable that the national grid can supply the required demand of Port City. However, for beyond that, it is important that the government really deploys, commission some of these power projects. As I understand, they are planning about a 600 megawatt LNG. Of that, 350 have already been commissioned by Lanka Transformers. I think another for 300 megawatt LNG, they have called for EOIs. In addition to that, there is huge plans by government also to use renewable, unconventional energy sources as well. So we hope that those plans will be implemented in order for Port City to have adequate power supply beyond the first 10 years. On the water consumption, on the chart below, if you look at that, what we say pre-ADB, what is highlighted in red is the wastage. Actually, in fact, we have a over 100-year-old infrastructure in this, and about 2 or 3 years ago, government got the assistance of the ADB to really lay new pipes. So the post-ADB, if you can see, some of those wastage have now been converted. So we already, once that is converted, we anyway have excess capacity. And the chart on the right shows that the total capacity and the Port City requirement is absolutely a fraction of that, which is about 25,000 cubic meters per day. It's good to really discuss what is the arrangement between the Sri Lankan government and the Project Company, which is the special purpose vehicle incorporated to develop Port City. So the land reclamation, as I mentioned, all infrastructure development, the investment, envisaged investment is actually now, it is not 1.4 billion, it's increased to 1.5 billion now, is to be done by the private sector project company. In return for that reclamation, in return for consideration, Government of Sri Lanka will give a leasehold right to the project company for 43%. That is about 116 hectares would be given to the project company to monetize it. I want to emphasize that we will not be putting up buildings, developing on all 116 hectares ourselves. In fact, majority would be called for investments by international investors. We may develop few initial plots to kind of instill confidence and to attract the required foreign direct investment, but majority of that 116 hectares would be developed by international investors and developers. Now, when we identify a particular developer or investor, the project company will surrender its leasehold right for that plot. And the government of Sri Lanka will sign a fresh lease agreement with the third party for 99 years. But the consideration for giving up that lease comes to the project company. So it's a tripartite agreement. And also, I want to emphasize the fact that the landlord is Government of Sri Lanka, and Government of Sri Lanka will be a party to any agreement, any lease agreement, which is entered within Port City. So that is to actually address some of those sovereignty and territorial integrity concerns raised by a lot of folks out there, to say that even on the 43%, where the project company has a leasehold right, government will be a party to any lease agreement, even within that 43 or 116 hectares land. So marketing, the commercial risk of this success as the project company has invested 1.4 billion, or now it will be 1.5 billion by the time we complete, lies with the project company. So it was important that this hardware, world best-in-class infrastructure, and we have now created land of that 269, 178 is marketable land. Now, how do you monetize this? How do you attract investments? How do you attract large brands to come and set up in Port City? That is where the requirement for a business-friendly laws, regulations was required, and hence there was a responsibility for the government to augment that hardware by the software that was required, business-friendly laws, regulations, which is now being implemented by the Port City Economic Commission Act of 2021. I will discuss a little bit more on the software side later. Let me move to the next slide. So this is the Port City Master Plan. Those color codes consist of 74 marketable plots. Now, if you see the land use on the left, the legend shows it varies from pure commercial, that means office towers, to mixed use. We have a convention center, a world-class international branded hospital, education plots. And what is coded in light colors, yellow, these are predominantly residential development. And also the largest plot within Port City is on the northwest, which is the integrated resort, which is theme park, with a 15-hectare land lot allocated for that. And here on the south here, the hook represents the first yacht marina in Sri Lanka. And this master plan was done in a very scientific way. First is that JLL, with the help of JLL, we did benchmark studies to really understand global demand for these developments. Demand and supply was forecasted even considering the local market supply. So that is how these plots have been segregated and allocated for each various types of development. However, having said that, in this dynamic environment, we need to make sure that there is adequate flexibility for the master plan to change depending on the requirement of the market. So there is provision that every 5 years, Government of Sri Lanka and the project company can mutually agree to make sure you can amend the master plan to suit the requirement. This was initially developed by �սկ𝐤𝐿 out of Sweden in 2015, and later it was modified by Sabana Jurong in Singapore in 2017. As you know, it's 260. I think that the separation of the GFA, gross floor area, between various types of development is key here. The largest portion is for residential, that is about 50%. And the rest is really for office and retail and recreational activities. Now, if you look at the master plan, if I go slide back, the west, or this half, is majority phase 2, which is light colored. That is for residential developments. So phase 1, which is adjoining the existing Colombo CBD, which are in darker colors, are predominantly commercial development, meaning office towers. So the trade and commerce needs to happen, or we need to be successful in creating a very vibrant business city for us to be able to successful in attracting demand for phase 2, which is residential. So a noteworthy point is that the engineering news record, ENR, which is a US firm, actually awarded Port City the best project last year in September 2020. As you can see, we have won many awards, including in Singapore Landscape Architectural Awards in 2017. And if you look at this master plan, there is high density. These are the high rises, more towards the existing CBD area. And as you move towards the shoreline, the new shoreline, it's the low rises, the low density. This is to ensure that the air circulation and the view of the sea is not by any means disrupted. Obviously, developing this master plan, the ventilation principles have been taken into consideration, the local climate and continuous green and blue linkages have been thought through. And there is what is called development control regulations. Now, for these each 74 plots, any developer who wishes to come and develop has to adhere to this best-in-class international guidelines in terms of putting up your buildings. It has 4 chapters. One is on urban design that talks about the use of the plot, the floor area, the building height, the plot coverage. And there's 1 chapter on the utilities and landscaping. There are mandatory landscaping requirements within each plot, and more importantly, on sustainability. So for each 74 plots, there are detailed guidelines on all these 4 aspects where developers need to strictly adhere in developing or constructing within Port City. What is important also is that there is what is called enough flexibility, however, given with still these guidelines so that commercial developers can vary to somewhat. But what we need to ensure that the aesthetics of the Port City remains. All of you will agree, ad hoc development had taken place in Colombo, and the significant limitations that has caused. So the idea here is that when a developer makes a financial commitment to invest in a particular plot, he needs to be assured that his view will not be disrupted by an adjoining building that was approved subsequently after him investing in that project. So we ensure that certainty is provided through this master plan and the development control regulations. I mentioned to you before, there's continuous green and blue hierarchy here. What is marked here are the primary system. Theme parks, the central park, which is here. Let me take the cursor here. This central park is about close to 12 hectares. And we have what is called park connectors from north to the south and east to the west. There are these park connectors. And more importantly, you would have seen in the video, there's an internal salt water channel. The length of this is about 5.5 kilometers or 5,500 meters. Width is about 70 meters. Now, along these internal water channels, we will have F&B offerings, beautiful promenades, retail offerings. And also, we will have an inland taxi service implemented within Port City, where you can really take a taxi from northwest and come down near the marina along the internal water channel. The transportation plan within Port City is also quite important, and we have given much thought when we are developing the master plan. If you can see this in the pyramid, in an average city, personal vehicles get priority, and the taxis and pedestrians have been given the lowest priority, whereas in Port City is really the inverse. So pedestrian and cyclists have been given utmost priority. There are dedicated walkways, dedicated cycle lanes within Port City, and what we are promoting is really a pedestrian and a cyclist-friendly city in Port City and promoting public transport. This is the cross-section of the main boulevard. As you can see, there are dedicated tree planting, and there are dedicated cycling lanes and shaded walkways, and there is also provision for an LRT, an elevated LRT. As you may know, that government has suspended the proposed LRT project, which was going to be funded by JICA. So our initial plan was that one of those LRT lines, which will come to the Fort Multimodal Transport Hub, we will get an extension. We will draw a line from that LRT to within Port City. Now we just need to ensure if the LRT is not happening anytime soon. Anyway, there is no immediate requirement for us to have an LRT because we will not have that population, I would say, in the next 10 years. But I'm quite sure that in the near future, government will roll out LRT or another feasible public transport system, and we will ensure that that system is integrated with a Port City transportation plan. This is the project timeline. We are here at the moment. Just 2020 here. So most of the internal infrastructure works, the parks, the roads, the main boulevard, all would be completed, majority by end of this year and some by mid next year. So you will be able to patronize the park and the beach before mid next year. And we expect to complete the marina by 2023, the first yacht marina internationally branded first yacht marina in Sri Lanka by 2023. And we have what is called social infrastructure, which is the hospital, the school, and the convention center. We hope to complete all that by 2025, including some hospitality development. And the total project timeline, our best estimate at the moment is 2041. Now, this is not casted in stone. Why I say that is it depends how well we can position Sri Lanka to attract investments. Now, if our sales velocities were as high as Dubai 10 years ago, I am sure we might be able to complete this project much earlier than 2041. However, if we fail to attract the right type of investors, global investors, obviously, this timeline may even extend beyond 2041. But the infrastructure and the reclamation have been done. So we have an asset now to be monetized. A quick progress. I think these are some of the pictures, how it looks. One second. So landscaping, all utility corridors. So there's underground utility corridors being developed, utility service corridor being developed. So these are real futuristic ideas where you don't have to really dig the road every time you want to lay a pipe or every time you need to make a repair. So there are dedicated, separate service tunnels for utility works. So of the 1.4 billion initial committed investment, 1.1 billion have been invested thus far. I want to emphasize that this is a foreign direct investment. There was no loan from the Chinese government to the government of Sri Lanka. It's purely on a commercial basis. The project company has made this investment. Port City was also declared under the Colombo Administration District in August 2019. And as I mentioned before, 3 rounds of EIAs were done. as we speak now, 100 hectares of land is now ready to be monetized or ready to attract investment, ready to be constructed. And more recently, Colombo Port City Economic Commission bill was approved. It is now law, and 7-member commission has now been appointed. Now, in addition to the horizontal development, what the project company has made a further commitment of another $1 billion to do vertical development. This was quite important, especially during post-COVID, to instill confidence. And we have come forward to invest a further $1 billion in 2 phases. Phase 1 was about $460 million, a mixed-use development for which we will break ground before end of this year or early next year. And also you will see a downtown duty-free, first downtown duty-free store being opened by end of this year or 1st January 2021. Until the mixed-use project, which I said we will break ground, is completed, which will take 4 years, this downtown duty-free store will be called a transitionary duty-free store. And once the buildings are completed, we will move in there. What you need to also understand, there is competition. We need to be brutally realistic about it, right? It is not contrary to many views. It's not that there are a line of investors are waiting to come and invest in Sri Lanka. There is a lot of challenges and this challenge intensified post-COVID. Now, not only developing countries or emerging countries in Asia like Sri Lanka, even developed countries like the UAE and Singapore is relaxing their regulations, is throwing in fiscal incentives. They are trying to attract talent by issuing resident visas, permitting entrepreneurs to relocate to Singapore. So these are some of the initiatives that these countries have embarked on. Now, for instance, before 2021, if you are investing in UAE, foreign companies were not permitted to own more than 50% of a company in Dubai, except within the free zones. Now, that restriction was relaxed from January 2021. Now, any foreign company can own up to 100% anywhere within the UAE. Even Hong Kong is embarking on such relaxed reforms to attract capital and attract talent. Developing countries like India is on a very ambitious reform program. They are reforming more concentrated on labor and land reforms. And they have set aside 10% of their GDP for that purpose. As Indonesia is also simplifying most of their investment-related statutes, which has been limiting in attracting FDIs for that country. Philippines, again, lowered their tax rate from 30%, which was before, and now 25%. Also, they give incentives up to even 40 years. So the point I'm trying to emphasize here is, yes, why is the hardware is ready? Why is 100 hectares of land is ready for investment? The biggest next challenge is to how do you position this piece of real estate, piece of township development for us to be able to attract the foreign capital. Hence, it was key that the Port City Special Economic Zone makes a statement among this other competition in the region. Now, we have inherent issues. Now, if you look at ease of doing business, this is a World Bank index, and they typically evaluate ease of doing business on 10 different verticals, 10 different aspects, starting about business, registering a property, getting electricity, trading cross borders, enforcement of contracts. Likewise, we rank 99 of 190 countries. Now, if you look at 2015, the chart on the bottom really shows a sorry state where we were 99 in 2015. 5 years later, we are quite stuck there. Whilst our largest democracy neighbor, India, was 130 in 2015, and now they're 63. And China again had jumped, made significant improvements from 84 to 31. So we needed to have really a paradigm shift in governing this city and have very attractive, competitive, business-friendly laws and regulations to really attract the investors, attract the businesses to come and set up here. So this is where the Port City SEZ Act comes into play. I must emphasize that this is only a framework. It's only an enabler for this law to be operationalized. Further regulations would have to be drafted. And I think that is the first task of this 7-member committee that is being appointed. So some of the key features which have been a limiting factor in doing business in rest of the countries have been addressed through this Port City law. So you can own up to 100%, foreigners can own up to 100% of a business, expeditious dispute resolution. In Sri Lanka, typically to enforce a contract, it takes close to 3.5 to 4 years on average. So no foreign investor is going to really come and do business if they are not able to enforce their contract. So there is a dedicated dispute resolution center, international dispute resolution center, envisaged in the law and will be set up within Port City to hear any commercial disputes. One of the key limiting factor or risk factors for foreign investors have been the foreign exchange risk. Because if you look at our rupee depreciation in 2015, $1 was about 145 rupees. As you know, now it's gone beyond 200. That's close to about a 35% depreciation of the rupee. And real estate development is a long-term asset. So by the time you really complete your asset, when you have 20 to 30, 35% depreciation of your investment, you have lost your return to the currency depreciation. So that is being very clearly addressed within Port City, where transaction currency is any foreign currency other than Sri Lankan rupees. There is a specific provision on investment protection, where any agreement, a lease, license signed by any investor, local or foreign, with the Commission cannot be revoked or arbitrarily terminated. I think one of the main key issues, which is the single window facilitator, where any applicant or a license holder, which is defined as an authorized person within Port City, only have to deal with one agent, which is the Commission. And Commission is quite powerful. Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, that's some
Yeah,
background noise.
Yeah, we can hear. Yeah.
The single window facilitator within the Commission is quite powerful to ensure that any application, any request by an authorized person who wants to do business within Port City is expeditiously addressed, and that is the only agency that you will have to deal with. Favorable employment laws, again, this was one of the key factors or limiting factors for us to be able to attract foreign talent. These have been addressed within the law, and the simplified and attractive tax regulation. So tax regulation is quite simplified to say the least, is that any foreign earnings, because the whole of Port City, the legal construct is an offshore destination, meaning non-resident companies will transact with non-resident companies, and any earnings, foreign earnings, is exempt from taxes. So these are some of the key features of the proposed SEZ law, and I believe that with this progressive piece of legislation, we really can have some serious discussions with potential primary developers and potential some large secondary demand, which is large brand, to come and set up in Port City to do business elsewhere. Use Port City as a platform. That is really the message we want to drive. These are some of the sectors we believe that will have a lot of demand within Port City. Offshore banking, financial services is one. By virtue of being adjacent to one of the best connected ports, Port of Colombo, I think shipping and maritime services also will have very high demand. As you know, we are known for our IT BPM. No doubt there'll be a lot of IT software development companies for export will utilize Port City as a platform to go global, and also obviously scalability is that much, because the proximity to capital, proximity to talent is one of the two crucial ingredients that is required for you to really access the regional markets. Capital markets, again, we expect a multi-currency board may set up in Port City. And corporate headquarters, obviously, take the advantage of the location to have some of these multinational companies to set up their corporate headquarters within Port City. I think many of you would have seen enough literature on benefits of Port City to the economy of Sri Lanka. I'm not going to discuss too much on this. I think one or two points I want to emphasize here is that a brain drain has been an issue for us. Every year, close to 100,000 skilled Sri Lankans emigrate. Of that, close to 25,000 professionals leave for better economic opportunities. By really creating Port City and creating that environment, we hope some of these large brands, multinational companies can come and set up here, and Sri Lankans will have an opportunity to work for those large brands. And also in the first 5 years, because there's an interim provision where companies can set up elsewhere within Colombo or otherwise until Port City buildings come up, I think it's definitely a much needed lifeline, I would say, for the struggling real estate market in Colombo until it bounces back. It may take 3-4 years to bounce back. I guess that's another crucial point. And third, very important point I want to emphasize is the legal construct is offshore within Port City. So anybody who is supplying goods, who is supplying services from rest of Sri Lanka to Port City would be deemed as an export and would be paid in foreign currency. Now that's a great opportunity, simply, especially for some of those small and medium enterprises, which they lack scale to compete in an international market. Sometimes their compliance requirement for export market is quite costly, and they were not being able to kind of compete. So this is a great platform because you are really creating an export market in your backyard, and you can test the market, and you can, as you supply to Port City as a deemed export, you can scale it up. You can go global, go region, access the region with using Port City and increase, or scalability is going to be great. So those are the 2 or 3 points I really wanted to emphasize. And that's from a goods perspective. I think it's important also from a services perspective. Engineers like yourselves will be able to provide your services now to a company set up in Port City, and it will be deemed as export of service for you. Engineers, accountants, legal profession. So I think it will really create a vibrant business district, provided that we are able to attract the right brands, the profiles to come and use Port City to do business. Right. I think that's all from me, Lalit, and I'm more than happy to take any questions you all may have.